if you're with someone that has ADHD, or you think you both have ADHD, like you need to start having these conversations around what your ADHD is, how it's presenting.
Yes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Brigi and Stuff. My name is Heywood. If this is the first time you've joined us, then thank you for coming along. ADHD is a tricky disorder to have, whether you're as a singleton or if you're in a partnership, whether you are the person that has the ADHD or if it's the other person that has ADHD, or in mine and Brigi's case, we both have ADHD. We've been together now nearly 5 years, and it's been a journey navigating both our ADHDs separately, but more importantly, figuring out a way to navigate it together has been crucial for the survival and peace of our relationship. I feel like that's why this episode is unique. There aren't many corners of the internet where you're going to find couples so openly discussing their neurological disorders and also giving insight on how they help navigate it, how they help cope, and, you know, having those honest conversations about what triggers us and what affects us in certain ways is vital in order to be able to then figure out how to alleviate the problems, right? And so that's what this episode's all about. It's about us sharing our specific experience, and we hope it gives you some value. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. It all helps, and all the other socials, whichever, wherever, whoever. Thank you for being on board, and let us know how you're getting on with your ADHD. It's important that we all share, and you know, it can help. Thanks. For people that might not know us that well yet, on what level is your ADHD affecting you on a day-to-day basis?
Very much, which I didn't realize for a long time because I didn't know I had ADHD until I met you. And it affects my life pretty much every day because at some point in the day, there are things that I need to be doing or tasks that I need to get done that I am unable to do. And
when you say you're unable to do them, what do you mean?
I mean that there are things that I need to do, but I just cannot bring myself to do it. It's like in my brain, I know I have to do it.
Yeah. And
I can tell myself as many times as I want that I have to do it. Just get up and just do it. But my body just doesn't. It feels impossible, which is a very strange concept to understand for somebody who doesn't have ADHD, because unpleasant things that you don't enjoy doing, because that's really what it is. If you don't enjoy doing something, if you don't have ADHD, often you can just be like, oh, fine, you know, I'll just put some music on or whatever and I'll just get on with it. Like, I'll just do it because once it's done, it's out of the way, and then you have that relief. But if you have ADHD, then you know that you should be doing it, which often sends you more even deeper into like a spiral, because then you feel guilty as well. You feel like you should be doing something, but you just can't bring yourself to do it. Like, it feels almost painful.
So what
the idea of,
what will happen?
Doing it. So what happens is that you don't do it, and then it just gets postponed. It gets put off.
We should leave a snapshot of the kitchen.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it gets postponed until it gets to the point where either, because it's the two of us, we figure out a way between the two of us to tackle the issue or the task at some point, or it just gets out of hand for some people. For some people, it really just escalates. It just depends on your personal situation. But the general case for us is that it just, depending on what mental state we're in at that time of our lives, it can get left for days, for weeks, for months, depending on what the task is.
I've noticed as well that our ADHD can trigger each other. So, for example, with the kitchen, if the kitchen's clean, but then one of us leaves one thing, the other one's very quick to leave another
pile
thing
on top of it.
And it so quickly happens.
It
like
does.
that.
It does, which is why, because we both have ADHD, it gets out of hand quicker, but it's also a more forgiving environment to live in, I find, because we rarely nag each other anymore. It's come to the point now where we both understand what the situation is. And sure, every now and then there's a little bit of like, because we each have our personal like things that bothering us more. It's like, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, me with the towels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I see the kitchen's getting out of hand, or if we see Bella's room getting out of hand, or the laundry, whatever it is, we kind of look at it and go, all right, cool. We lost track of that one, but I can look at it and go like, okay, this is a shame, but at some point,
because we're both
we will figure it out.
Because we're both aware that it's not being done on purpose.
Exactly,
it's
but this wasn't always the case, and I still struggle with on difficult days. I struggle with feeling overwhelmed, and I get easily overwhelmed. And if I'm overwhelmed by something else, the state of the house just makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, right, I'm gonna have to do something, because this is like adding to my overwhelm, and it just feels so unnecessary, because it's like,
yeah, I get it too. You know, if there's too many things that need to be done, and none of it's getting done.
Then I don't think, by now we got to the point where we still don't nag each other. We just come to each other and we're like, look, I'm really struggling with this. Like, we need to do something about this, because I can't handle it anymore. Like, often you come to me with the clothes and you're like, right, I've reached my point with being clothing all over the house. Yeah. I'm done with it. Let's figure it out.
We've tried so many different systems to try and tackle the clothing, especially.
Yeah.
The clothing seems to be like the hardest one, because there's so much of it. And it's definitely like a joint effort. Me
realizing that I had ADHD was because of me we met, right? Like, I had no idea what it was before. I always felt like there was something wrong, but I just accepted it as my personality. And then when we met, and then I was like, oh, you were telling me about it, and I was like, oh, but that's me. That's what I feel like. And then from then on, we began our journey of like figuring it out together and realizing, okay, we're both struggling, and we're going to struggle together.
Yeah, I think, and having conversations about it is one of the most important things to get any like possible wrong thoughts out of your head. Because the worst thing in a relationship is if you think the other person has stopped caring, or if you think that they're purposely not doing something that they said they would do.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that you think that they're being resentful towards you and shit like that.
I think another thing I found really helpful with having relationships, either it's friendship or our relationship with another ADHD person, is that you can relate to what it's like being punished or being spoken to a certain way by people who don't have ADHD and being treated in that kind of way. And so we can always come back to that and be like, oh God, all my life I've been told, just try harder, just pick it up, just do it, just get it done. And all the weird little quirks that you can relate to, like, oh my God, I do that as well. And because we talk about that, and because we say to each other, you know what it feels like when somebody's constantly shaming you for something you have no control over.
Yeah.
We know not to do it to each other, or at least we try our best. It's like the empathy kicks in so quickly.
I was going to say, because of the ADHD, I think one of the byproducts of ADHD is hypersensitivity and being very easily offended and being very easily upset.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't take either of us a lot to say to the other person if the tone is just off a little bit, or if the word was just a little bit too sharp.
Yeah.
The other person will pick up on it straight away.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to put you, it's like you transported back in time to when you were a kid getting told off, and then suddenly it's like whoosh.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely, yeah.
And that fucks it up even more, because if you or I were like unproductive at the moment, that makes it 10 times worse.
It does.
And then and more importantly, then the relationship is, you're in that like limbo of awkward and uncomfortable, which I personally can't stand. Like I really struggle with any kind of, I don't struggle with confrontation, but if we've had an argument and there's unresolved tension in the air, or it's just gone silent, it kills me.
I know.
I really struggle with that silence, like that it's not okay silence.
Yeah, so it's funny, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I think there's so much positives from us both having ADHD in supporting each other, because it's easier to support somebody when you can relate to them and understand them. And so we have so much of that, and there's so many positives about like how to deal with it and how to help each other because we relate. But on the flip side, the hypersensitivity on both sides, even no matter how much awareness you have, some of the like hardwiring in your brain is like your reactions to things are so much more intense than other people would have.
It's a balancing act.
Exactly. And so that's the part that's like a constant struggle of like not taking the reactions personally every time, and if you do, having the ability not to let it fester but to like still force ourselves to figure it out.
I think it's only been since the past 2 years where if we've had like a little thing, like, and they were bigger at the beginning of the relationship, but even if it was just a little thing, I've felt comfortable to be like, okay, let's get this sorted now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
definitely.
never let it roll on for more than a couple of hours or something, if possible. But it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, and it depends on the intensity. Like sometimes, because this can be affected by our what's going on in our life in general. If we're generally in a good place, like everything's good, work is good, life is good, then it's easier for us to get over it. But if we're already struggling, like as a family, then everything's heightened and everything is so personal. And like, for example, if we have a few bad days with Bella and we're both just like very tense, then everything is so heightened. And you know what I've noticed? I have this thing, and there's a name for it. I don't know what it's called, but you know how there is within ADHD or within neurodivergence, there's these little like rejection sensitivity disorder, I think, on its own, and all these little things.
RSD.
I have something that has a name where when I'm about to do something and you tell me to do it, and I immediately feel such a strong
oppositional defiance disorder or something like that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I have it. So I realized it the other day because I don't know what I was doing.
I used to have it.
I was in
bizarre.
the kitchen and I was doing something, and you reminded me to do something, but I was about to do it, and I immediately was like, well, now I'm not doing it.
Funny.
I'm not doing it. And then because I know this, I was like, well, you are, but give yourself a few minutes. And I had to give myself a few minutes to like calm down from it.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that with you.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
And it makes me irrationally angry in a second, which is why I know it's like I have no control over it. Is another one of those things.
I think my medication helps me with that.
Yeah.
I think it resolves that a lot. Because I think I see.
Yeah.
I see past it, or the reaction. The chemical reaction isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's definitely like an immediate.
Yeah, it's a trigger.
Like I feel exactly, and I feel it so deeply, and I'm just like, well, I'm never fucking doing it.
Yeah. That's why we get in trouble so much.
And I don't want people to misunderstand what we're saying. It is never okay to use your ADHD as an excuse to be abusive, to hurt other people, and to like ruin other people's lives. That's not okay. You have a personal responsibility as somebody with ADHD, because
just like everyone else.
I don't want to go as far as to say, because people will misunderstand and think, oh, so if you have ADHD, you can just go around and do anything. No, you can't, for example, latch onto someone and drain their bank account because, oh, I have ADHD, I can't look after myself. That's not okay. You have a personal responsibility to look after yourself.
And, yeah, there's a point where, and that responsibility can often look like, hey, I'm struggling, I need help.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because there's a difference between intentionally using the ADHD and it just getting out of control. And you have a responsibility either way.
Definitely.
Because I think that some people can, you see it especially in ADHD relationships where the ADHDer will become really reliant on the non-ADHDer, because the non-ADHDer step-ups in a sense and starts doing things, and then the ADHDer kind of feels the comfort of that.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's a real thing and a problem in itself, but you need to acknowledge when it's not healthy anymore.
Exactly.
For yourself and for the other person.
Exactly.
And then you have to step up and go, actually, this isn't working for me. I need to be given more responsibility, or
which
that can be especially a problem with couples and like money.
Definitely, and it comes back to having to continuously try and never give up, trying to find new tools and trying to find new ways to help yourself, because yes, it sucks, and yes, it's not your fault, but also you can't, if somebody else is doing stuff for you to help, that's fine for a while, but you can't expect them to give up their life and their interest and their whatever it may be because of you.
And also, for those that really can't get past a place that they've got to, and it is still being detrimental to themselves and their partnership, then they need to seek other help.
Exactly.
And also keep in mind that, like depression and anxiety, they then become separate disorders that have their own evils about them.
And let's not
that
forget
need to be resolved.
With ADHD as well, that especially in relationships, and it can't, there's a lot of nuance to these things, but ADHD often, like you say, goes hand in hand with anxiety, depression, and addiction.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of gray area and a lot of nuance that goes into it. It's not as simple as, just let the ADHD person do whatever they want. Like, clearly that's not what we're saying.
Right. Exactly.
There is personal responsibility and...
Yeah, right, exactly. I think if a couple has got a problem with their ADHD partner because of, them being abusive or them having a problem outside of the ADHD thing, even if it's connected.
Yeah, right, which often it is.
Separate issues that have to be resolved. And you can still be compassionate about the ADHD, but ADHD is not an excuse for being a dick.
No.
Even if you are being a dick because of your ADHD.
Exactly.
Then you have to face it. Yeah. That can be the hardest part for people with ADHD.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I struggled with like substance abuse and being a twat. But once you realize, it's like, okay, but now you have to change something or try or seek help.
Yeah. And I've been on the other side where I've been the person who just becomes reliant on somebody else and just goes, cool.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. Yeah. It's so I know I could do it. Yeah. So just to go back to that point where you were saying, like, on different days we might be feeling a bit extra sensitive, and depending how things have been with the peanut.
Yeah, life.
It was what's that woman's name that talks about the percentages?
Yeah, it's Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. I love what she says when she'll say that she'll come home and you've got like an energy valve of where you're at, and like 100 is like your peak. You've got so much energy, you can be there for your partner 100% sort of thing. And then like 20 is like, I'm flat, I'm done, I haven't got space.
Yeah.
And to be able to use that distinguishing really simple chart with your partner and be like, right, I'm on a 30, and then your partner can be like, okay, I'm like on a soft 60. Like I can carry it a little bit. And we used it just the other day when I was like, because just having not felt great the past few days and being like, I don't feel great, we're going to have to take it in turns sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's something that it does feel like that, in my opinion, where, you're struggling and you see that the other person seems okay. You almost hope that the other person can just kind of carry it for you.
Yeah.
Like you can just, especially in a family, like if you have children, but even without, keeping up with the house or just life in general, doing stuff, you kind of hope like, oh fuck, I'm so fucked, but like maybe they've got it.
And
then you come home
you
and then
almost
you both
assume
like,
you almost assume it, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I do anyway. I think if I haven't got it in me, like Brigi can take over, she can do it, and it's like, no, not always. It's not always the case.
Yeah.
But then I think that's why saying like, especially if I've just come back from work and you're on like a 10, if I'm on a 40, I'm on a 40. Like I need to step up a little bit.
Yeah.
But what was the lady's name again?
Brene Brown.
There was another point that she made was like, if you're both on a 20, it's like, right, how are we going to figure out how to do things so that we don't end up being destructive?
Yeah,
because it's when you're on your 20s and then, life is still asking responsibility from you.
Exactly.
And if you've got children, shit still needs to get done. And it's like, right, battle plan. How are we gonna get this done in a way that we're gonna end up not damaging the relationship?
And I mean, I think we've been pretty lucky with our way of life in general, the way we arranged our lifestyle. We've made sure ever since having Bella that we will try and not sweat the small stuff anyway when it comes to her. Like I feel like we've gotten pretty good at feeling like, okay, if something's going down, how important is this? Is this worth the battle? Is this worth the fight? Is this worth doing anything? And so if the house is a mess one day, which is one day, let's be real, but if it's really bad and we're both just like, we have like this week because we were both sick and all three of us were sick, that's when you pull that out, when you're just like, do you know what?
And you know,
nothing's happening.
And you know something
we're still in survival mode.
Something that I think is important for couples to do with ADHD as well is, you know, because there is a lot of guilt involved with ADHD, and regardless of being in a couple, like ADHDers carry that burden on their own.
Yeah.
And so I think for couples, if the person with ADHD says something like, oh man, the house is such a mess today, but I just can't, and they've shared that vulnerability, for the other person, with or without ADHD, just to give them that reassurance, like, don't worry about it. Or like how many times has it been where I've gone, and it's come from a place of guilt and knowing that I should do it, and I've gone, oh baby, I'm sorry, I haven't done the kitchen today. Not because I think you're going to be angry, but because like I feel like I should have done the kitchen, like that's my thing.
Yeah.
And then you've gone like, fuck it, don't worry about it. And then that little like permission,
exactly.
That little like, it's okay, it's cool, like don't worry about it, that lets me chill for the rest of the evening. You know, and like vice versa, it's like
definitely. I think the only thing that might complicate things for some people, which we're lucky we don't struggle with, is if one of the people, for example, because often in a couple that lives together or has a life together, it comes down to household things or things to do with everyday life, right? And I think there are cases where one of the people, whether they're both ADHD or not, somebody could have a very specific struggle with other things. And so they can't, like it's impossible for them not to, for example, have the kitchen done or the dishes done, like some people have that where it's like, and so that's something else to consider and to keep in mind for the other person. It's like, okay, out of all the things, what's the most important for you? What's the most important for me? What each other's priorities are, because they might be different, we might be very different.
Yeah.
And to just like focus on that. It's like, if we're doing nothing else today, if this is going to literally like ruin your day, let's focus on that. Let's do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some like hard realities that especially non-ADHDs, like neurotypicals, have to face. And that's, okay, so say for example, one person hasn't got ADHD and the person has ADHD. Chances are the person without ADHD is much more efficient and on top of things around the house. Now, say for example that they've got a little speckle of OCD and they really like it clean. The ADHD, that urgency isn't necessarily going to help them. And knowing that their partner really needs it clean might not help them either.
Right.
It's at that point, I think, the non-ADHDer has to really kind of come to terms with the fact that they might have to do more around the house.
Right.
And they might have to put in that extra effort.
Yeah.
You know, because for all, having ADHD isn't fun, and it's also got loads of cons for the partner.
Definitely.
And nothing's going to change that. There's only like coping strategies and understanding that's going to help.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, if you're with someone with ADHD and they're doing your tits,
I guess what I'm saying applies. Yeah, what I'm saying applies more for people that both have ADHD, because even within that, there are crossovers of different.
With like a us example. Oh shit! I'm going to learn some stuff.
Well, I don't know about us, because I'm trying to think of us examples, but I don't have anything.
I know, for example, with the kitchen, the kitchen for you is an important one. Oh, no, well, I can give an example. An important one is with the kitchen. The kitchen's important to keep clean for you, because I know in the morning if it's a fuck tip, then you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Right? I also know that you're always going to be very forgiving. And for me, it's underwear and socks.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, the kitchen's a shithole and I'm wearing underwear from 3 days ago. So like, we're cool. But like, this is a real thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that kind of like...
Yeah, but so this is what I mean, like, right? Like, for example, which for that reason is why out of all the tasks that I could get done, my number one priority will always be laundry, and your number one priority will always be underwear. The kitchen.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
it's, you know, that's what I mean. Like
if there's any space to do something,
something, I know that for you, that's like within because we have tasks more or less arranged amongst, or like we know by now who does what, like we've kind of figured it out. But yeah, so I know it's like, okay, that's on me.
Yeah.
that's and like the same way, it's like you don't come to me and be like, oh, for fuck's sake, like you never do it. Like you're always like, I need underwear, and I'm like, shit, and then we laugh about it.
And I think what's another important point for couples with ADHD is to understand, going back to the sensitivity part, is that if your partner is noticeably angry or vexed about something, say for example, like I'm stomping around like, oh, for fuck's sake, I can't find any clean underwear, that the other person doesn't initially might take it like, oh shit, they're pissed off at me. Oh God, it's a me thing. But then has a little bit of, if they haven't had the conversation yet, realizes that no, they're just having a moment.
Yeah, right. You can objectively get angry about the fact that you don't have it and not blame the other person. Like, it's your fault because you didn't do the laundry. It's like, no, fuck, it's just we're struggling with this big thing that's bigger than both of us, and it sucks.
It's important to give your partner grace if they've triggered, basically.
If they're triggered.
If they're
by
triggered
something, right?
by anything, really.
Sure.
I mean, as long as they're not harming you or anything around you or damaging stuff, then. But the thing is, this is all in context, right? This has to be after you've had those conversations.
For sure, yeah. Like it's not. It can't be out of nowhere.
If you're with,
if has to be understandings.
If you're with someone, and explaining, and being fucking vulnerable and explaining like, this is what it's like for me, I can't help it. And then there's a level of belief that you need to have in your partner. Like,
exactly.
But I don't think anybody wants to be struggling, right?
Yeah, of course
like no
not.
one, you know, this whole thing of like, oh, you're so lazy. Like this fucking word lazy, like who chooses to be lazy?
I know.
Like lazy isn't fun.
No,
because if it was, it would be called chilling.
Exactly. Yeah, lazy is not a thing.
No one chills against their own health.
Exactly. I think lazy was supposed to just mean when you're not doing something on purpose, like meaning you're relaxing with intention and you're just being lazy or chilling. That's all it's supposed to be. And it's been like turned into this fucking bad word and weaponized for people to be like, oh, you're just lazy. And it's like, nobody's just lazy.
Yeah.
No matter how they appear, if they're laying on the couch all day scrolling on their phone, that appears lazy. That's not lazy. Yeah. That's a struggle.
It is a struggle.
It's not.
There's a different word.
Chosen, exactly.
I don't understand why there's not, well, maybe there is, but why there's a specific word for people with ADHD that, you know, when you need to do something and you just can't. That crazy mind fuckery feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Like you know, especially when you're at work and you know you've got these tasks to do and you're putting them off and you're putting them off, or the email or the message.
You know what, actually, we were actually saying this with Natalie the other day, how we even think as far as there should be help for people who have ADHD. They should be allowed to, for example, be missing things or be late on things. Because the reason this conversation came up is because she received a fine. And she received a fine over something that she had no control over because she forgot. She forgot something. And to most people, this just seems like, oh, sure, yeah, what else are we going to do? Oh, we're just going to fucking anybody can do whatever. Like people quick to go there. But somebody with ADHD, it feels unfair when you get fined time and time again for something that you're forgetting to do. Or they're telling you something like, oh, you should be doing this when it comes to your home or your business or whatever. And it's like, you have no idea. You didn't know this because somebody with ADHD wouldn't research that. I feel like there should be help for people like that, and there should be a grace given if you get a fine and you can prove like, look, I have ADHD. Like, I forgot. That's a valid fucking reason.
I partly agree. I mean, I also think people with ADHD should be given loads of extra help.
Yeah.
Like it should be classed as what's the word that I'm looking for? As a handicap.
Like a disability of some
disability.
sort. Yeah.
Handicap. That's a very old-fashioned word, isn't it?
Yeah.
a disability.
It's
The
a
problem
disability.
is, right, if the government did start giving allowances for ADHD as a disability, it would be fucking 10% of the population.
Yeah, right.
And so that's why it needs to be more integrated from the beginning. There needs to be more coping strategies. There needs to be more conversation about it. And I guess it needs to be more like kind of just accepted on a national level.
Yeah, because it just seems unfair that imagine if you're trying to, get somewhere in your life and then you keep losing money because you're receiving fines or you keep missing out on opportunities because of things that you have no control over. It's like
Getting
it seems so
late for
unfair.
work. People getting fired because they're constantly late for work.
Exactly. And I saw something about that. I saw people making fun of, there was a TikTok that's gone viral where this girl was crying and saying like there should be people who have, and she phrased it in a way that was very triggering for most people because it sounded very like, oh my God, very Gen Z, very fucking, a new term for everything. Blah, blah, blah. But she used it as a phrase for people who struggle with time management or whatever, I don't know. And people were just like, so like, oh yeah, sure. Like, oh my God, what, like, these snowflakes, what do they want? Like,
Could you find the clip? Do you think you can find it?
I can try.
I'll add it.
Yeah,
I'll add it now.
So I just got yelled at for asking a very reasonable question. So I'm applying to go somewhere, and I just wanted to know, are there accommodations for people who struggle with time blindness and being on time, And then the person I was with interrupted and acted like I was asking something else, and then when we were done, they actually started yelling at me and saying that accommodations for time blindness doesn't exist, and if you struggle with being on time, you'll never be able to get a job. Provided you're trying your absolute best to be there. And then they're like, your stupid generation wants to destroy the workplace. And yeah, I think that a culture where workers are just cut off because they struggle with being on time, when there's other solutions that we can look to, I think that just anybody who thinks it's okay to just treat people like that, yeah, that culture needs to be dismantled. And then I asked that person, how can you feel good about yourself upholding this kind of system? And then to think I'm entitled. No, if people think it's okay to treat others like this, that's entitlement.
I definitely think it's something to think about. It's like, not to be so hard on people because nobody's choosing to struggle with these things.
Yeah.
And to help.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this misconception that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, but people are just, everybody says that they've got ADHD.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody wants to pretend to have these problems.
I know.
And if it's not ADHD, then why are they saying they've got ADHD? Because that in itself means that they've got a problem.
They've got something going on.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? It's also this like, people saying that they've got ADHD so that they can take medication. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they're pretending they've got a problem and that they need medication. But if they haven't got that problem, why do they want the medication? Mm-hmm. They've got a fucking problem.
Exactly. So one way or another.
So let's just resolve the shit, the problems, right?
Like, I know, and also this really harsh idea against self-diagnosing, whether it's ADHD or autism or any other neurodivergency. Neurodivergency, is that a word? Neurodivergencism. You know what I mean? Everybody's like, well, not everybody. A lot of people say it's not fair to other people. You can't just self-diagnose. You're not a doctor. And it's like, true, but you know yourself. And if you can see that you're struggling with something that most of the world isn't struggling with, and you're constantly singled out because you're not like everybody else.
It's 2023, like the information's out there.
I'm sure there are some harms to it, like there's harms to everything. But really, if you think about it, what's the harm in somebody self-diagnosing and then reaching out to a community that are also, whether self-diagnosed or really diagnosed, and helping each other, learning new tools, potentially finding out things about themselves they didn't know, trying to better their lives.
Giving themselves some fucking grace.
And giving themselves some grace. It's like, I don't see the negatives, because even if you say you have ADHD and you don't, but you start treating yourself with more kindness, and you start, learning these new things that you can implement into your life, new tools with emotional regulation, that's good for fucking everyone, whether you have ADHD or not.
Yeah, right.
And so you self-diagnose, maybe you don't have it, but you're going to better your life anyway. I think it's self-improvement. That's not a problem. It's
important to say that there's a lot of diagnosed people with ADHD that don't medicate. And with coping strategies and understanding of the disorder, they really cope really well. Yeah. And so it's the same for people that aren't officially diagnosed. They can increase their quality of life just by understanding this diagnosis that fits the bill, right? That fits what they're feeling.
And then if not, then take the fucking medication.
Yeah.
Because take it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive advocate.
Yeah, me too. And I haven't taken it yet, but I want to.
And you will.
I want to feel normal.
I look like a fucking Cocker Spaniel. Great. There's going to be 9 clips of me looking like a fucking Cocker Spaniel on my...
I wanted to talk about...
Talk to me.
As an ADHD couple, when we both have ADHD, I think this works for people who don't both have ADHD, because I feel like most people struggle with something. Do you know what I mean? There's something. One of the things that really helped us is figuring out, which was a process, figuring out what anxieties or what struggles we have individually, and which one of them overlap and which one of them we can help each other out with. So, for example, me not being able to make phone calls.
It's a good one.
Or
it's
even
a good one
write
because
emails.
That's a real debilitating one for you.
And that's something that I've never been able to do, but in the past, obviously, sometimes I had to, because I was on my own and I had no choice. But
Oh God! And mine is like when we go to Costa and I can't order.
Yeah, exactly. But this is
right.
and it's something that, like, in the beginning, I remember it was a bit more frustrating. Like, just especially if it was something, for example, like you were telling me, oh, well, you have to call the ADHD clinic, you have to call them and really call them a few times to make sure that you're in and that they're going to see you, because it's important that you push them. And I'd be like, okay. And then I would not do it. And then days later, I'd be like, have you done it? No, I haven't. And then it just snowballs into this huge thing.
And I get frustrated from it.
Exactly.
I did get frustrated
or
from
calling
it.
the GP, unless it's for Bella. If it's for Bella, I will call them in a second.
Yeah,
it's
the
urgency is there. But if it's for myself or for anything else, then I just can't do it. And it took us a while to figure that out, where you would always ask me to do stuff and I'd be like, I will. And then eventually you were like, do you want me to do it? And I was like, I really just can't bear the thought of it. And it gives me so much anxiety.
I think now the majority of the times I know that it's just something that I have to do.
Yeah, and vice versa with other stuff, like you said, ordering. But it's not just that. It's obviously we say ordering in Costa, but it's like there's a social anxiety element to it.
Yeah. Going up to anything.
Yeah, which we both struggle with, but that's something that I can muster up the courage to do easier than you can in some situations.
Yeah, because I've always thought wow, it's like you can really do that bit.
It's because I think that it's another one of those things that I have perfected over the years. Like, I really, really struggled with for a long time. But as I was becoming an adult and I had to do it more and more, I created my scripts that I go with. I have my scenarios in my head. Every single scenario is played out. It's safe. It's secure. I know what's going to happen. I know how it's going to play out. And because of that, I can handle it. Because I know that it's very little that in those situations that can throw me off, because it's like a pretty straightforward exchange.
Yeah.
And so unless like that one time I had to put in the PIN number and I didn't know the PIN number and I had a queue behind me.
Yeah, that's some stress.
And that was some stress.
Shit.
But even that I was able to handle better, just because of I've practiced it so much now that I'm like, do you know what? It rattled me a little, but I was like, I've got this. And the person was so helpful. I'm sure he was probably neurodivergent and he felt it, because he was like, this is my worst nightmare was happening to you, so I got you. I was like, thank you. But yeah, it's so important to figure out each person what they have and what they need help with, so that you can just kind of I do this, you do this. We kind of take turns. Yeah. It's like, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of our episode. What's one piece of advice that you would give to a new or an old couple that have ADHD, whether it be one or both of them? Mm-hmm. What advice would Brigi give them? What advice would you give?
I think for people who both have ADHD, even if there's just a one person, I think if you're continuously having to try different things, right? Like, you always have either a new task. That's one of the fun things about ADHD, starting new projects and getting excited and having, because there's so many positives about it as well. to focus on that, first of all. If you're in a relationship where one person doesn't have ADHD, I'm sure that's one of the main, like, it's one of the really fun things about being with somebody with ADHD is how much fun they can be and how much it's spontaneous and they're crazy and their excitement for stuff is just fun to watch. And I think it's nice to remember that at hard times, but also for the person with ADHD not to lose hope. Whenever you try something new and it doesn't work, if you think, right, this is how I'm going to hack this little situation that I have, I'm going to try, it's something I learned, something I've heard of, it's a tool, and you try it and it doesn't work for you, that's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's ADHD is very different. Just between the two of us, we're so different, and the same things don't work for us. Yep. And so whatever you're going to try, if it doesn't work, don't let it completely discourage you and feel like, and I mean, it might feel like that, and that's okay if it feels like that. But remember to then sort of still keep trying until you find what works for you. Because we found what works for us, and it's not perfect, and we both still need help. Like I still, there's a lot that I need to work on and figure out how to hack little things of my ADHD that I really struggle with. But overall, I think it's very helpful to continuously looking for new tools.
Yeah, and I think what you said is true. Like if you feel hopeless, that's okay as well.
Yeah.
Because I think what a lot of people will do is that they'll be so hard on themselves for feeling something because they know that they're not supposed to feel that. And then it's like, well, no, everything that you feel is fine.
Yeah.
If you feel bad, sad, mad, that's good.
Exactly.
And then it's like, allow it. I think the more you try and like resist the feelings, you might suppress them for a bit, but they don't go away.
Exactly.
And then just to allow it to flow and then, keep moving.
Yeah, and if you see something worked for another person, for example, let's say a lot of people are told in times of struggle, why don't you do yoga and meditation and, the typical go-tos. And for some people it really works. And I've met other people with ADHD who can meditate and it really works for them. But I have, it somewhat helped when I did it, but it didn't make a big enough difference that I was hoping for. The work that meditation helps for some people, I was able to do it in different ways. I was able to like train my brain, for certain things. But meditation wasn't that, and yoga as well.
There's loads of different things, isn't there, that can help with ADHD. It's like, for me, if I had loads of overwhelm and I need to take a break, like I'll have a bath. But I know because of your ADHD, a bath is not what you want to have.
It's sensory overload.
Yeah, I think like my biggest piece of advice for couples especially is, even if it seems really, really difficult, have a conversation. Set yourself a time every week, say like a Sunday evening, to sit down and have a talk about where you're both at and how you're both getting on, and talk about how, your ADHD is struggling, how it's been making you struggle that week in particular, and just keep like going over it, because you'll find little tricks with each other.
Yeah.
And the more you communicate, the easier it will get.
Definitely.
And then in those like moments of hopelessness, sometimes just communicating, that alleviates a lot of the hopelessness. Because sometimes like I'll be in a place of like, I'll have spiraled, because every now and then I'll have those spiraling thoughts and I'll get to my shit place. And then I'll talk to you, and then, we might talk for an hour and nothing works. And then you'll say one thing which just resonates. And I'm like, oh, that's it. That's completely it. And it will just take me out of it. And you're not saying things to try and find the key. You're just saying things because we're having a conversation. And also, like, you can't undervalue how having open, honest conversations with your partner helps you know each other better.
Yeah.
Like you'll get to a point where, you'll instinctively be able to help just by talking.
Exactly. Yeah, and we've mentioned it before. Not being hard on yourself is a really big one with people with ADHD because there's so much guilt and shame that's involved in having ADHD, and that's a lot of it you give to yourself. You know, people will give it to you regardless. Like that's just how the world is. They will make you feel a lot of guilt and shame, but you should try to to not on top of that pile on for yourself, add it to yourself because it's not helpful. It makes you feel worse. And
and also I think it's because we're coming from a very like Zen kind of perspective, right? Because we've done the work, and it's not all Zen, but
no, of
we've
course
worked
not.
we've worked hard to kind of find this like peaceful way of communicating. Wasn't always like that.
No, and it still isn't always like that either.
It's not, but we're so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
I think for couples that are still in this, in that space where they use like nasty comments or derogatory, or no, that might not be the right word. Like for couples that are still using bickering or like being mean or put downs or doing the whole like, yeah, but you did this. That kind of conversation's never going to really help. And, you know, making the other person feel bad about something isn't going to resolve anything. And 9 times out of 10, they know, you know. So keep that in mind with your ADHD partner, whether or not you have ADHD. That, you know, compassion is really the only way.
Yeah.
And also, you ain't going to fucking cure the ADHD by being a dick.
No. And adding to the shame is just going to make that person go further down.
And I fully appreciate that it's frustrating and difficult, and like it blows your mind sometimes that like, why can't this person do this thing? And yeah, like us too. It's hard.
It is.
And I really believe like for some people, they might not have the tools to be with someone with ADHD who's early on in their journey and still trying to figure it out themselves. Because it's a lot of like, and I hate the term, but baggage, you know? But I think like with any person that you choose to be with, if you're going to be with them, you've got to be with all of them. If you're only with the good bits, then you're fucked because you're not with a full person.
Exactly.
You know, and then you're in a dream world and then your relationship's a farce. And the truth is, if you can love the difficult bits, then you get all of them.
Yeah.
And then your love grows, right? Then your relationship grows.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to be. You want to be on the side of the relationship where it's growing, not slowly dissolving and chipping away.
Yeah, and to leave it on like a more positive note as well, is that because of everything that we've talked about and all the negative parts, the positives are so enjoyable.
Yeah, right.
Like we can be so weird and just laugh at even the negatives. We can laugh about it so much because it's funny sometimes. And sometimes there's nothing you can do but laugh. Yeah. And there are so many fun aspects of ADHD and so many like really good things about it. The fact that you're able to take such a deep look at yourself. Yeah. It's often people who have some sort of neurodivergence are the ones who have the ability to do that. Because
I feel like they're the ones that become... Yeah, sorry, go on.
Because if you don't have... If you just kind of fit in, then you get to be on automatic a lot more. If you don't fit in, you're forced to look at like a deep, hard look at yourself. Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful thing because you grow so much and you learn so much and you open yourself up to so much more. And empathy for other people and understand other people and want to know about other people.
And there's something really enjoyable about bumping into people and then finding out that they have ADHD as well. Yeah. Because there's an instant connection of years of the same bullshit. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like every ADHD that we've ever met is very different to the last. But there's I don't know, they all carry the same kind of characteristics of like there's a little bit of madness in them. But there's a lot of like compassion and love
and fun
and fun and understanding and sadness, right? Yeah. Like there's a lot of sadness in there because it's hard. It's really hard.
It is really hard.
But Yeah, and it's a journey, man. I think it was just yesterday when we were talking to Ben, like the journey continues the whole way through.
All the way.
Like even when you
never reach the end.
You can unpack everything, and then there's still more to unpack.
Exactly.
Like, and it's the process that's you've got to try and enjoy and appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Amen.
Big up my ADHD tribe. Brap, bitches. Bitches ain't got no stitches. I did not take my medication today.
Baby, you know my love is true. 'Cause I've been